Another round for how to build a library. And I'm Muisa Muntali with Africa Walnut Project, and also wanted to acknowledge the presenters of today's event, of course, Sankofa. If you can give Sankofa a round again. And also Positive Productions Incorporated, PPI. And the Association of the Study of African classical African civilizations. Thanks. I always mix it up. And Africa Walnut Project, which I'm part of. And I want to give you a little background to how this film came today. We showed this film actually at our New African Film Festival last year, and it was also received great attention at that time. And one of the people watching it and who wanted to make sure we brought it back is none other than Dr. Greg Carr. So if you can give Dr. Greg Carr, he is the reason why we're having it today. He wanted to make sure we show it today, and particularly during the association's ASCAS conference. And thank you very much for all those who are here, who are not from this area, coming to this film. I actually talked to somebody, I won't name who they are, from LA, who actually has been looking to watch this film, and she managed to watch it today. So we're glad that we were able to provide that service. But the film is also important because, as you can see, there's a huge onslaught against the study of African peoples, the collection of African people's works, and it's very timely as well. And also, the good thing is that you're also understanding that onslaught is not just within the United States; it's also in the motherland as well. So that's one important aspect of the film. But before I don't want to say too much, I'll hand over to my colleague, James Pope, Dr. James Pope, who is with Africa Walnut Project. The other half of Africa Walnut Project, we give a hand as well. Thank you, James Pope. And Dr. Greg Carr. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Check. Thank you all for staying through this film. Thank you all for being here. I think we should just get right to it. And what I wanted to do, and I talked to Greg before this, we want to pull you in immediately. We don't want to have this. We want to have a conversation. We don't want to, kind of sit up here in the context that we know everything. But if I
that anyway, you would do that?
No, I wouldn't.
You know it all?
No.
I didn't think so.
And plus,
like, wait a minute. Hold on.
I wouldn't sit here and listen most of the time.
Yeah, I do want to say about Muisa though, just right quick, James. First of all, thank you, brother, for being here and in this space. And this is our How to Build a Library right here. So we know that. Let's give Sanko for another.
Absolutely.
They're engaged in a fundraising campaign right now. And thank you. I will already put it out on social media. They're the best in the business filming and streaming right now. So if you're watching this now or later, support Sankofa financially, because we don't have the king and queen of England coming through and all this, or corrupt politicians, and, that kind of thing. So we got each other, and that's all we need. The other thing is, Muisa, like you say, when they showed this, that African Film Festival, when's the next one?
We have the Caribbean Film Festival that's coming up in June. Then we have the African Diaspora Film Festival that's happening in August. The New African Film Festival will come back around in March.
Okay. Yeah. If you're in the DMV or if you monitor the internet, because you can get all this information through Africa Now, the platform, right? And it's put here. If you get a chance, come, because you really don't want to miss it. These films are fantastic. And like Muisa said, I cornered him in the lobby as soon as that music went off, including that fire last song from Sampa the Great, Female Energy. Yes, I'm like, I was like, Muisa, you got to bring this back, man. Do you know these sisters? He's like, no, I don't. And it took him until now. So Muisa Muntali deserves another round of applause. He is the reason that this film is here. So anyway, go ahead, Jay. I just want to make sure.
And I back that up because he's the one who watched those films.
No question.
so he does all of that work. Just putting the work together for the film festival. You have to watch that And I actually leave it up to him because I'm actually in the semester anyway, so I'm dealing with students and those type of things. But no, you're 100% correct. I just wanted to just have an open discussion. I just want to pose one particular question that I think is just, kind of in this particular moment. This film, what does this film offer in this particular moment where we see this long durée of another iteration of anti-Blackness, anti-Africanness? This film offers a lot in the context of us really thinking about, concepts of embodied knowledge, who we are as African people, who we have always been. So I just wanted to open that question, but as Greg kind of, riffs off of that and think through that, please, by all means, I want you all to kind of interject as well. Okay. And I'll come run to you with the microphone. I don't mind doing. I get on sneakers.
These Negroes got more than 2 microphones. I think they probably got somebody.
But yeah.
We'll
figure it out.
Yeah. But I'll just say that, as we talked about this, we were able to get this together in part because of the mix of folk. It's not a big space, but I know you got a lot of your students here. We got Dr. Wilkerson in the back. Courtney Wilkerson will be at her spot up the street, Roosevelt High School, tomorrow and Saturday for the ASCAC conference, who is doing K-12 work and also teaching across the street. A lot of folks here from out of town with ASCAC, and I don't mind naming her, Dr. Sharon Johnson, who was one of our long-standing members, came from LA. It's like, Sharon, we at the reception across the street. She said, yeah, I wanted to make sure I saw this because I've been stalking this film. This is only the second time they showed it in the United States, and the first one was here. But all of this coming together, yeah, absolutely. The question of what this means now, and we were book people, and across the street we have a library, the Wayne Frederick Undergraduate Library. It doesn't have a single book in it, which somehow to me really does state the general crisis in knowledge. A lot of people in the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, everybody's a book person, but they came from a generation for whom the book was everything. Not the university library, but the public library. Not even just the public library, but the bookstore. Not just the bookstore, but the corner merchant. Not just the corner merchant, but the pamphlets that were written and distributed. And so our challenge is less the challenge these sisters faced, it seems to me, because they are trying to recover institutions. We're trying to build them. Some of these ASCAC Negroes was going up to university libraries and throwing books out the window, call themselves liberating the books so that we could get them, and then making photocopies. They're trying to raid the library, not trying to enhance the library. And I'm saying that type of subversive activity has to be restored for a generation for whom the physical book isn't even a fetish anymore. I remember John Henry Clark used to say, y'all buy Dr. Ben's books and use them for furniture. He was, oh yeah, look, did you read the book? So, but to fall in love with books, remember, what's that movie, Brown Sugar? When did you fall in love with hip hop? Do you remember when you fell in love with books? Does anybody remember? And in terms of the books that the sisters said we ain't gonna change the name until we put our books in here, do we remember when we fell in love with the Black books? The ones that made us say, oh, I've been lied to. The ones that remind us of that beautiful portrait by Carrie James Marshall that hangs down the street in the National Portrait Gallery of the sister there, all ebony, sitting in front of the bookshelf with so many books that we know, the Van Sertima books and all of it. And all you see above her head is the thought bubble where Brother Marshall has written S-O-B, S-O-B, S-O-B 3 times. And that could mean son of a bitch, or it could be sob, sob, sob. I didn't know all this, but we all remember those moments. And just thinking about those young people who are in that library, those mothers on only one hand went up. And then by the end of the movie, they're getting face paint, and they're all in the, who cares if Charles comes through there with his old raggedy ass looking wife? At the end of the day, we got a place to go to discover ourselves. I should pause there because I meant that, James. Do you remember that Black consciousness phase? Because us crazy hoteps and Afrocentrists are crazy. Anybody says that, I challenge you, if you're here today, let's talk. But at any rate, do you remember when you had that eye-opening moment?
Yeah, I actually do. It's interesting because I come from an environment where books were just always around, and encyclopedias to be exact. Those old, and so the Britannica, those type of things. So they were just
The
around.
World Book,
World Book, all of that.
Childcraft. Y'all remember
Yeah.
Childcraft?
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
right. That's right. So for me, just being in that environment, I would trip over books. But let me just say this: I wanted to play basketball, so I would trip over them and move them out the way. But eventually, I picked them up. And so, yeah, I do remember that particular moment. And I wanted to say something really quick in the context of this movie. Outside of this movie, we work with a lot of folk in Kenya, Kenyan Organic Intellectuals Network, and other folk who are in social justice centers in Kabira, Karagocho, and those particular places. And they are doing the same thing in the context of a resistance and making sure that they look at the radical histories of the Land and Freedom Army and making sure they record those stories, and teaching people in what they consider to be the slums. So those I wanted to pay attention and give a nod to those young folk who are in those particular places and building institutions in dire situations, but really, just on it. Again, shout out Kenyan Organic Intellectuals Network. You can kind of Google them, and they're also writing. So they're writing books, they're writing their history, they're writing their particular struggles. So I just wanted to, in the context of this movie, but also to talk about the wide range of building, non-institutional, which is also in the context of our genealogy as well, too. So reading, right? I mean, reading. This is, I've heard you say, a number of times talk about reading. Particularly for our students and young folk, I often say that there is an illiteracy, not an illiteracy. Right. This notion that reading, there's an aversion to reading. There's an aversion, which is also an attack on an imagination, right? So talk a little bit more again in the context of this moment. In the context, we're both in the academy, we're both outside of the academy, we're both in other spaces, trying to build, and connect across the world, people in spaces that are trying to do this work, trying to build, trying to recover. Your work talks about recovering of memory, right? You talk about long genealogy. What does this mean in the context? And again, if you have a question, raise your hand, say something. What did the film make you feel when you watched it? That becomes important as well. I want to know how you felt in the moment. And also, is it something, how can you teach this film? How can you teach the ideas and the concepts that can become important as well?
I would say this: I'm a recovering academic.
Mm.
I reject the premise of the academy.
Yeah.
I fundamentally reject it.
Yeah.
The university is dead.
That's absolutely great.
And HBCUs are the only reason HBCUs aren't dead is because the people who are in them are Black people. But the structure is death. It creates a division. We saw it in the lab here, right? Exactly what you're talking about. These organic intellectuals, they were in the street in the last scene, but they're not in the library. And so illiteracy, I'm glad you raised that, brother. Man, the ability to read, but you choose not to. When I was working for the schools of Philadelphia, this is 1999, 2000, just as we started Philadelphia Freedom Schools, which was all about reading. I gave a talk to the principals in the city, and I called it hip hop, because they're hip hop. Everybody want to make everything hip hop. Yeah, okay, that's important, but we talked about illiteracy. I'm not sure, because we're teachers. Anybody in here, there's a lot of teachers in here, some master teachers in this room. I see our friend Catherine Adams, who does incredible work at Claflin, not just at Claflin, but beyond. She gets her check from Claflin, like we get our checks from Howard, but we are recovering academics, you know what I'm saying? But have you found, and this goes for everybody, that with each passing generation, illiteracy may mean something different? You probably started articling in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Everybody was talking about the last couple of months, where many students show up at college. I'm talking about Howard, Columbia, Berkeley, wherever, FAMU, never having read a book cover to cover. and struggle in the classroom with very basic language every day, to the point where I'm sure we've talked about this. My friend Kwasi Kanadu, our friend Kwasi Kanadu, I asked Kwasi when he was in New York. We were at Medgar Evers one time. I said, Kwasi, how are you grappling with this question of reading in the classroom? He said, brother, I just take a phrase out of a book and use it as a proverb. And then we grapple with that sentence or two, and then we go through the language. But the idea of read these 30 pages, read these 5 pages, read these 2 pages, read this page, read this paragraph. And when you say, okay, we were reading, who were we reading today? Seti Robinson, Black Movements in America. And he's talking about the negations of the movement. How long it take a student to unpack the negations of the movement? They haven't read Marx. They haven't read Hegel. I don't care whether they read Marx or Hegel or not. What's a negation? They're not stupid. This technology has literally washed through in a way that looking at books become daunting and they're boring. We faced that in freedom schools 25 years ago. We're reading and there are no pictures. We would deliberately pick books that had no pictures. Here's a dictionary. Here's a book that you wouldn't read in graduate school. You're 16 years old and nobody expects you to do anything but live and die in North Philly. And we're going to go through this book line by line and we're going to bleed on these pages. And that's how you end up with a Shanice Thompson. You know what I'm saying? We're going to bleed in these books because the genius isn't the question. The question is the context. So I'm not even sure. Literacy, I don't know, man. What you in the classroom every day? And this goes for everybody. Now we opening it up because there's a lot of teachers in this room who've been teaching for years.
Yeah. As you know, we in media. We have podcasts, we have radio programs. We're heard on Pacifica Radio. We actually heard on NPR, which always surprised me how much they let me stay on NPR down in North Carolina. But it's interesting when you talk about a page. The first time I asked students to even listen to a podcast, I'm like, don't even read anything at this particular point. Listen to something. The first question they asked me, how long is it? Wow. So this process, this struggle.
What do you say?
I say take bites. I equate it to the processes. Our brains are a muscle, but our mind is something different, right? And so what ends up happening is that I just tell them, when you look at it, just chop it up into pieces like you're taking bites. It seemed to work because they just did a paper and it was wonderful. But then at this particular point, I don't know if it's ChatGPT. I just want to read something that's Claude. Yeah, so. But yeah, I mean, it's a struggle that I think a lot of us have to deal with. We cannot shy away from it because in this particular moment, we need everybody on deck. These white supremacist, fascist folk are not playing with us. We're the only ones. Most of us have been thinking that they've been playing for a long time. But this process is of teaching. This process is of education. I'm really interested. I actually had a conversation that with Nubia Kai earlier today. We're thinking about and I heard when you was on Saturday you had mentioned Nubia Kai's work. And we were just talking about, this genealogy and the remembrance, how people are able to actually, when she talked to the Jollies and the Domas, they were able to remember things that go way back. And then I'm thinking about the fact that, our students sometimes don't even remember to come to class in the same semester of the class that they're in. So, I mean, there's many struggles, there's many things, but I don't think that we need to shy away from them. By imagination, I think we need to figure out many different ways and just keep struggling, keep hoping, because like you said, Shanice Thompson, I sat on a dissertation committee of 2 students who came through my program and they just passed they got PhDs, one at Clemson and one, 2 at Clemson, and then there's going to be one at North Carolina, Chapel Hill, because we sat together, we struggled through concepts, we struggled through words, we struggled through that. So we just tried to just implement that process of, struggling with the idea, struggling with the words, but we just got to unlock what is already there, which again, we're all the teachers. We all come from traditions. We just have to, I don't like to say that we just have to, because there's many we have tos, but I think that this movie provides an opening for us to really think deeply about context and about history and what we're doing. You mentioned recovering institutions and then building institutions.
No question.
I am also one of the people. People often tell me I'm the most anti-academic academic in academia.
I'm not even against it no
you
more.
know,
I'm just like,
just
I'm not fighting with them people.
right. So what do you all think? What I mean,
Yeah. And let me just say one other thing in terms of that close reading and getting down with it. You saw the pictures like when the brother is sitting there in the library writing, and then the other brother say he worked at the law firm. And he could come here and exercise his mind. The great reading rooms that I know, if it were up to me, if I had time and we weren't in trouble as a race, then fine. I would spend all day in the reading room at the New York Public Library. I love the reading room at the New York Public Library. But where I learned that close reading, where I saw it practiced, Dr. Reba Kelsey is sitting there, her parents, Reba and Niabi Kelsey, east side of Columbus, the African Center, in a circle. Some college Negroes and most who weren't. First World Alliance in Harlem, New York. Chad talk about First World, all the circle, the community. I don't have contempt for the university. I'm clear that, like Cornel West was, he's Chapel Sunday. He said, all y'all are smart. We got all these beautiful people at school, and this kind of thing. But ain't none of these institutions produced the Curtis Mayfield. His point was that the genius of our people isn't at the universities alone. It's in the community. Sister Genevieve here, a graduate of Howard University, she loves her beloved Howard University, and I love her bragging on us being at Howard University. But she brought that genius from New Orleans, didn't you? You brought that you didn't get it over there. And too often we assume that, or we associate our genius with these places, and then they replicate this class formation that has us estranged from the community, and even talking like, now that we got education, let's go back and help the community. No, fool, the genius sent you there to see if there's anything worth getting. Our objective now, to me, is to build these spaces. That's what ASCAC does, build these spaces and use those spaces as places to kind of see if there's anything we can retrieve from them. But we have to invert that as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to take this over here and see who wants to talk.
Oh, I think he had. Yeah.
Oh, you got one? That's all right. You got it. Okay. She got it.
Okay.
Y'all gonna run
I'm going to
movies
try to
out.
answer your question, offer up we'll ask you a question and give you a realization that I had during the movie. So to answer your question, when did I fall in love with books is actually when I was pre-literate. My first memory is of sitting in my father's lap and looking through a microscope. He was getting his PhD at the time, DVM PhD. And, I was running around playing in the house and looking through pathology books. So, dissected this, dissected that. And eventually that became, falling up with zoo books, those little magazines. And so I was interacting with them as a device. They were as much a part of my play kit as my Barbie dolls and, going and digging in the dirt, playing in the playground. You play with the books, you handle the books, it was just there. So just answer from one audience member. I wonder about this scene where they're talking about, do we call what the governor or the senator, I forget who it was, the Your Honor or Your Excellency, or and I have a genuine question. How much of that has to do with any sort of Kenyan indigenous hierarchical tradition, and how much of it was Kenyan elites clinging to British colonialism and keeping those titles for themselves? It's I think it's really interesting how many countries, including the United States of America, where we've had these revolutions, but it's not to be free people. It's because we want to replace the king, and we don't want to be. I think when people are being intellectually honest, particularly conservatives, they're not saying that, we want freedom. We want to be able to do what we want. We want to be the kings of our castle. Every house is my castle. I don't want to be a feudal lord in this tiny space. And my final point, I guess going back to feudalism, is I sort of had this realization that I mean, okay, I didn't know if I should cry or vomit when in both scenes when the royal family showed up, when Elizabeth I and her raggy son shows up. It absolutely. I don't have the words like for the pain that I feel seeing those images, and I kind of came to this realization that these so-called royal duties that they take so much pride in is to make sure that the Commonwealth stays mentally colonized, so that the elites want to, like the most literate, want to emulate their colonizers, while also bragging about how they're independent. Look at what we've done after we won our independence, and at the same time trying to glorify, have the cake and eat it too, cherry picking what we're going to say is worthwhile about our indigenous history, our pre-colonial selves. It's just the Commonwealth needs to die. Like I just like Republicanism can't come soon enough.
Anything inbred will die. Look at
Yes,
Charles.
yes.
I mean, which is why
it's just absolutely like disgusting, and I'm a little bit proud that we, and completely by accident, that we have an African American woman who, by function of stumbling into this institution, is kind of because of the public to question it and tear it apart a little bit. I mean, I'm not making Meghan Markle here, no. That's
I was thinking of Tanya Brown Jackson.
No.
Oh, you Meghan Markle?
Meghan Markle, just people.
What's she doing?
No, this is just the way that she's treated, and like there's like a lot of people who couldn't care less about the royal family. They completely passed by it, but then they're just like, what did she do to them? Why are they so mad at her? Like what?
Because she's you.
Right.
That's
because she, but I think there's a lot of people who just thought like, oh, the royal family is harmless. There's tabloids. Yeah. We don't pay any attention, and it's drawn some attention, and I do think it's part of one of the things that in addition to inbreeding that will eventually see an end to this notion of the Commonwealth. And I mean, I'm not trying to praise her, because frankly she's complicit. She wanted to do that work to go promote the Commonwealth.
Love knows no color. So.
Yeah. No, and I mean, but I mean,
I ain't mad at her. She doing.
No, she's living her life.
She's living her life.
She's living like you're into it, we're into whatever, but she was willing to participate in those royal duties.
Yeah, God bless her.
She wanted to be part. And I don't think she meant anything by it. I don't think she thought about it.
No.
This thing that she did. Yeah, that this going to Australia or New Zealand or wherever, they thought she would be popular, and they say, oh, what a loss for this institution. She would have just been a tool of oppression.
Well, let me. I agree, of course, because that's how they would use us, right? Mm-hmm. Do we think that Europe, with its various formations, whether it be England or France, or is the same as the United States in terms of that kind of centering? I'll tell you why I say that. I don't know if you saw a couple of days ago, maybe yesterday, sometime this week, Victor Wembanyama, the Congolese center for the San Antonio Spurs. I wouldn't call him French, because that's just like calling Giannis Antetokounmpo Greek. But he was doing some math, because they asked him, I don't know if some of y'all basketball folks, fans, you got, what is it, 63 games you have to play in the NBA in order to qualify for postseason awards. And he was sitting there, and they said, do you think it's right? Because so-and-so, I forget who it was, missed these games. He's at 61. And so he was like, well, let me think. It would be how many minutes a game do you play? And if you play 30 minutes a game for 50 games, they did the math. That's 450,000. And he said, so but if you play 64 games, but you play 20 minutes a game, he said, well, that would be, like 180,000. And then he kept doing these math. And so all of the real time reaction was, oh my God, look at her. And then Charles Barkley with his stupid went to Auburn for 5 minutes, round mound to rebrown bread truck. I was in high school when he was at Auburn. Is on the NBA podcast talking about all these stupid American kids need to go to France to get education. And I'm thinking there is a French level of education, but there's also an African expectation. And that man's ability to do simple math in his head is as much about his father as his mother's home country. And I'm saying it to say that American generally, United States generally, don't even have that level because this system is for trash. And I'm saying all that as a context in the context of this. When we see them parading through with their dead weight, I don't even think we should be troubled by that. They are so deeply inferior to the people that they're walking around. We shouldn't even spend any time thinking about.
Is that even the problem? But
What I'm saying is that I think our capacity, this comes to the literacy question, our capacity to break that cycle seems to me, even in that context of Europe, England in that case, or France coming through, or the Pope, for example, Leo was in Cameroon, wasn't he, this week? And then Algeria, he was in that 4 African countries. Our capacity in the United States to break that, I think we're in a better position to do that because of the general, I won't go so far as to call it stupidity, but the general inferiority of the dregs of European colonialism that crossed the Atlantic in terms of the British than it is for the Africans who are trapped in those colonial formations. These people in the United States of America are stupid. And we've been able to maintain our cultural kind of thrust in part because they don't have the developed capacity to suppress it. In fact, when we show it, they move toward us, which is why if you want to talk about opera, they don't want to hear the New York Philharmonic. They don't want to hear the white. They want to hear the blues from the United States and hip hop from the United States. And if you want to hear opera, you go to the opera house in Italy. I'm saying how that connects to what we're watching right now, what we're really trying to do now. How do we capture not only our experiences? Because you saw those elders, right? I think that's something we need to do as well. Interviewing those elders. We need physical space. We just sit elders down. We were talking about that today. Just interview, just talk about when you were born. Talk about what you remember. Let's record it. But also then to connect those experiences to a deeper dive into that unbroken genealogy. Because I think now what we've gotten caught up in is mistaking our experiences for our memory. And we think, okay, we're Black people and we've come in and we went, okay, and that's how you end up with things like the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, where you enter and the first thing you're hit with is the trauma. And if you try to put something from pre-captivity Africa in there, they're going to accuse you of romanticizing and then clap and cheer when your child comes through all the trauma and then gets a scholarship and demonstrates a proficiency in Greek or Latin. And they say, look at no, but that's, Meta Nature is somehow romanticizing, but you clapping because your child went to the Junior Latin Society. So I'm saying we have to now connect the experiential to the long view memory, and then we take our chances with whoever we see in world history. But I think, Sister Kelly, I didn't see you over there, Sister Dr. Kelly. She knows what we did at Freedom School. We grounded that in classical Africa, and then we bring it all the way through. And people couldn't understand what we were doing, and we didn't try to explain it to them. Because you'll lose a lot of time trying to explain to people why memory recovery is important, that you could just spend the time recovering memory and get out of the way and watch these young people bloom. I went too far. That's because you start talking about, I start thinking about, let me stop. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Hey, y'all.
What's up, Prof? Macy Walton.
Yeah, so my name is Macy Bakari Walton. I'm a daughter of the Black Nationalists of Chicago, and I'm a professor at Howard. So I love this question because it connects the two for me. And I'm going to start with the answer, but I have a question for you all. So the answer to when did you fall in love with books goes to my privileged upbringing in the Institute of Positive Education or New Concept Development Center, one of the African institutions or independent Black institutions of Chicago. And I want to give a shout out to my second teacher, Mama Carolyn Grantham, here for the ASCAC conference. She was my Tabidi teacher, or the 4-year-old classroom teacher. So going to New Concept, we had the best part of having Third World Press, had a bookstore at the time. So I'm at the school all the time. So being able to go up to the bookstore, pull a book, the Tiger Wears White Gloves, I Am Me, whatever I wanted to pull off of the shelf and read at the time. So that was me. We needed something to do. So that was our free time. So we had a bookstore and that was what we did. And my brothers and my sisters did the same thing. So we all fell in love with books. One, of course, from our wonderful teachers, but also because of the position that we were in by having Third World Press connected to the school. So I know that was intentional. So being a professor at Howard, I try to bring that energy, I try to bring that spirit, I try to bring that intentionality into the classroom. So I teach Spanish, but everything I teach is about African people in the Spanish-speaking world. So I'm like, all right, we're reading this chapter about Sankara in Spanish, or we're going to read about the Congos in Venezuela in Spanish, or we're going to go and talk to the Africans who speak Spanish. So I try to bring that energy and that intentionality in my class. However, and this is the question.
You had an answer.
I don't know. I don't know, because I saw a connection. I saw similarities in what I saw in the library and the renewed library in Kenya, but what I see here, and people were on their computers.
Absolutely.
They were not pulling books from the shelves. They were not saying, hey, I want to check this out. Do you have this book? They showed the books, but I didn't see anyone looking for the book. So my question is, how do we get our young people, not just college students, but how do we get our young people jumping up and down, excited about reading, excited about books? And I want to know from my bibliophile right here, or anybody, I want the students to say, I really enjoy reading this. Where's more? How can I find more? How can I read more? Can you assign more? I want to take the next class by somebody else whose books I read. And I have a few, but I want it to be more, because just a few to me isn't hitting the target. So that's my question. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, I'm gonna get absolutely. I'm gonna answer this quickly though. I just want to, because Dr. Walton is important. I'm glad this is being streamed and being recorded, and I'm glad I was thinking, because I know Charles and Carolyn were coming over here, and Baba Larry went to the hotel. He'd be here tomorrow. So your people are here, and so you are living proof of concept of that genealogy. And what we did, and Kelly, you can talk about this, and I'm gonna get this to you, Mom Genevieve. What we did was, in Freedom Schools, we just dropped them in every year. The first book we read, I think, Kelly, was with Randall Robinson, The Debt. That was probably one of the easiest books over the years. Du Bois. We read, everything. We read the big biography on Ella Baker. That what's her sister's name in Chicago? Yeah, Barbara Ransby. Yeah, and there's Dr. Tisdale, Stephanie Joy Tisdale. She knows we didn't care what your reading level was, but we took that from your teachers that you had the benefit of raising, that we as adults had the benefit of encountering. It doesn't matter. We'll bring you to the capacity, but let me be quiet, because there's a lot of master teachers here who can answer that question as we try to figure our way through it. Go ahead.
It's a simple question. I'll just give my experience. When I was pregnant with my first child, my husband and I were in a bed, and he was reading the Times, the book section of the Times. He came across this advertisement of this book, Give Your Child a Superior Mind, written by two German folks, husband and wife. I think they were Siegfried. Anyway, I passed that book down to my granddaughter. But my daughter, when she was, Sesame Street came out, and so I didn't have to teach the alphabet. I going to work to make some money so I could down payment on a house. Anyway, anyway, but then I was, pregnant getting home, and she was 3 years old, and I taught her to read. And by the time she went to pre-kindergarten, she was 4 years old, and she was reading on the second grade level. And so, and it said with my first child, my second child, and my third child, a boy, he wouldn't let me teach him to read until he was 4. And when I would, try to seduce him with a, page, I said, I'll give you a cookie, you read this page. So did that with my daughter, and my son said, no, okay. So I said, beautiful. I said, okay, you read this page, I'll give you a nickel. He says, okay. But my daughter, who I taught to read when she was 3 years old, did not teach her children. So I, grandma taught, was teaching child number 1 and child number 2, who was just about 2 years old, said, I want to read too. To make a long story short, they were really, all of them are really into reading. And my granddaughters had quite often have come to my house and gotten into my library. They got into my libraries and take it, Grandma, can I have this book? Grandma, can I have this book? And, yeah.
Not can
There.
I borrow? Can I have this book?
Can I have this book?
Oh, no, that's a protocol. Can I have this?
And they are into African history. That's not their major, but they're about learning about African history about us. So that's one way I think you can start with these young.
I'm gonna stand here.
But I guess we still trying to figure out what Messi's question of scale, Mama Jenna, because we've all done that, but how do we scale it? I'm not sure. Oh, Kat got it. Baba Bernie's. You want to? It's up to y'all. Y'all South Carolina.
Okay. Well, to answer the question,
Yes.
my love for books came early as a result of my mother's genius. I was a mischievous child, so when she got ready to spare the rod, she would tell me, and she didn't call it time out. She would say, "You just sit there until I tell you to move." And it could have been excruciating, except that she strategically placed books around me within reach. So I filled the time reading, and before I knew it, I was hooked. But what I wanted to bring up, and I don't know whether anyone else noticed it, early on in the film, there were quite a few scenes of women sweeping. And I'd like to see, I hear someone else notice that, and I'm wondering about discussing the significance of that in the context of what these sisters were trying to do.
You know the first dance that there's a lot of filmmakers in here. The one that answered is lurking around somewhere. He's probably upstairs or downstairs. I'm sure it had a significance, but it would take a filmmaker. I don't know. Some of you filmmakers might have to answer that question. Bob, that's because it certainly was not without significance. The directors made choices. We should see if we dig highly up sometimes.
I'm not really sure how to answer that question. I think my memory is not clear about, when did I first love reading? But I have a picture that I carry on my phone. I think I was about 4, and I had a book, and I would, sitting on the sofa in my parents' house, and I love that picture, and I like to think that was when I fell in love with books. And I also remember when my mother would take me shopping, if she was going into a department store, this is in the early 70s. So she would deposit me in the area where the books were. And then she would just go off and she would shop. She would look for clothes and then she would come back and I would be there reading. And I know, we in times where you can't leave your child like that. For many reasons, but I'm still here, so something worked out. But I'm a product of that Philadelphia public school system that did not do their due diligence with the curriculum. And I just remember being in 8th grade and we read a Langston Hughes poem. I didn't know who he was, but it was I Too was the poem. And I'm reading and I'm like, I too sing America, I'm the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow. And I just said, this person is Black. And I realized that everybody else I had read was white at that moment. So I memorized the song. I memorized the poem. I know I had books outside of school, but in the school experience, I think it was 8th grade when I realized that this is a Black writer in contrast with everything else we had read. And I want to be thankful to Johnson C. Smith, because when I came in as an English, when I switched to being an English major, we had some wonderful classes. And my first English class, I read The Eyes of Watching God. And I wasn't aware of Zora Neale Hurston until that second semester of my freshman year. And I've been reading Stephen King and V.C. Andrews and a lot of horror novels, And so, yes, I've just been thinking about those are the book memories that I have. And I guess the question that I have is that in kind of inheriting and claiming my grandmother's books, my grandmother, she finished high school in Philadelphia. I think she sat in on some college lectures at Temple because I found her notes in books. But I have the books that I could rescue when she transitioned. And when I thought about like how to build a library, I think it's beautiful to explore the kind of woman that she was versus who I thought she was through her books. So I thought she was always engaging people politically and, and in these debates. And I was so surprised to find so much literature. We later found out that she had named all her sons after writers. Like my grandmother was a lit person. And I guess my question is, what do we do with these elders who have these libraries that they have curated over their lives? And we have these libraries that are not really libraries anymore.
Just trigger something.
In answer to the larger question of being in love with books, my mom was someone who she was so we couldn't even in earshot of her we couldn't say that we were bored because the response was go read a book, and it was just like and she kept books, like kept restocking the shelves with new books and all these kinds of things. She was just like, you can't be bored here because you got books and you didn't read them all yet. So get to reading. So thank God she was there, because I'm actually a relatively lazy person. And so she made me not be quite as lazy. The other part is, so then the second time I fell in love was being in Philadelphia Freedom Schools, because I read about Us. I started reading Us, and I was like, that's me. Wait a minute. Like, I like all the things didn't have to be, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Like, it's just like, and I loved that book when I was a kid, but then I was just like, there's these other stories that these other authors are telling, and I was so grateful for that. And so Philadelphia Freedom Schools kind of created a Wahemi Masu in me, like, as far as that's concerned. And then the third thing I want to say is I just experienced like the key again of how we keep our children in this rhythm. I no longer work full time at a freedom school, so I now work for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and so my children are littles. I then exposed them to our freedom school. So Sister Kamali Johnson trained my middle school littles to be literacy mentors to kindergarten and second grade children. And so we just experienced a dear time where so these 7th and 8th graders read to the kindergarten and second graders, even though, kindergarten children, they might look at, I'm sorry, DEAR is drop everything and read. And so it's sustained silent reading. But this was also enhanced DEAR time, because we also did activities with the children and things of that nature. And again, they might look at somebody like a Sister Dr. Kelly, and they might appreciate and respect the Sister Dr. Kelly, but they want to be, they want to be Kim. They want to be like, so it's important that we train our young children to teach the younger children than them to exactly. And I watched children who did not have the blessing of home libraries just have an amazing experience with somebody that's just a little bit older than them, and then go away with a book of their own. Like, this is yours, baby. You can take this home and begin. And like, we don't have books at home, but several of the children said we don't have books at home, which of course broke my heart. But then it was just like, this is your first of your library, and just helping them to recognize the expectation is you should have books. Like, books should be amongst your possessions. And so that's what I want to share.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my name is Charles Grantham. Butt sore. Excuse me. Chicago's coming out. But anyway, I want to comment about the film. And it brought back memories. Kenya. I lived in Kenya. My wife and I, at that time, our daughter was about 6, maybe 5. Anyway, but we had lived in West Africa first for 2 years in Niger, and we traveled through West Africa. And then I was transferred over to, we were Peace Corps volunteers. I'm a certified licensed prosthetist, orthotist. In other words, I made artificial arms and legs and so forth and so on, neck braces, so forth and so on. So my skills were needed all over. But West Africa was great. And when I got to Kenya, I noticed it was totally different. And as I'm looking at the film, it's like, oh yeah. If you didn't know that they had mentioned that it was Kenya, and maybe with the accents, it could be anywhere but Africa. Well, my experience, when I got to Kenya, I met my counterpart, my Kenyan counterpart. We got to know each other before I was introduced to where I was going to work at Hospitalia Minnow. It was also an orthopedic hospital and dentistry. And my first faculty meeting, all my colleagues, soon to be colleagues, were there. The principal, Dr. McWay, was there in front of the class, and my counterpart brought me in. We're sitting down, and he introduces me. Happy, I stand up. And I was sort of dressed like Bernie here, with West African dashiki. And the first thing my principal says to me in front of all the faculty is that you must think that you're African. Being from Chicago, because everybody else had ties. This is Kenya, Nairobi, 3-piece suits. And I wasn't going to get away with that. I said, you must think you're a Brit with that 3-piece suit on, and it's 80-degree weather.
It's 90 degrees.
All my soon-to-be colleagues just looked at me and dropped their heads. But the mentality. So when you talk about them talking about, speaks to somebody as your honor. This is what I had to put up with for 3.5 years. But here we got people on the streets, can't walk because they don't have a prosthesis, or like polio is rampant. So no crutches. You have people scooting around on scooters and whatnot. And my faculty meetings, I'm trying to get this done. And some of my colleagues are talking about something totally irrelevant to what was really needed among the people. So, sometimes, people say, well, what? You want Africa to be like, you want it to be like they're not supposed to evolve and become modernity. And it's like, yeah, why? Yeah, but there's a way, but but not just them. I had colleagues in West Africa who tried to out-French the French. So, you can go either way, but at least for the most part, they tended to dress in Western clothing, African clothing. But in Kenya, yeah. But I made some great friends, had great times, but they were just time. I got put out of the club, the British club, because I was in judo, and my instructor was British, and he wanted to take us all to dinner. So he was going to take us to the British club. Well, I forget, but it was the British club. And so I walk in with them and everybody, and they says, well, he can't come in. It's like, well, why not? Because he doesn't have a tie on. Hey, I started wearing ties, and right. But, so, and I'm saying, but wait, we're in Africa. This is independence, right? Independent Africa. Look, I didn't get in the club. And that was okay. I said, fine, we went, found someplace else to eat. And, almost got put out of another club because I refused to drink my beer out of a glass. I'm drinking, I'm supposed to be in a nice club, right? But the waiter comes up to me and says, sir, do you have a glass? I said, oh yeah. I said, it's right here. And, and he looks at me and he says, well, shall I pour it for you? The beer. I said, no, I'm drinking out the bottle. He says, sir, we like, for our patrons to drink out of. I said, I bought it. I said, if you got a straw, I sip it. I'm going to let it go. But, go to Africa and experience it. All part, and just be open. Because sometimes we go and we do tend to dream about what we think it should be. And there are some areas where it might be. But just be realistic and be open and ready. Because, you could blow your mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me? Okay. Thank you so much for bringing this film to us. I have been wanting to watch this. So that person from LA, same. That's you. My Zora sister. Okay, word. So also Greg, look what's happening. That's Sister Kathy. Ooh.
People, yep.
Oh, anyway, I just put the two together. But building on what you were saying, you reminded me. I'll follow and show you the pictures because it's a whole thing. Dr. Isai Barnwell of Sweet Honey on the Rock just had an estate sale. So when you were talking about getting to know somebody through their book collection, baby, that book collection, wow, you know, what a woman. And she's still with us, you know, but she had signed sections of books. I don't know if this is going in and out. You know, just unsigned, like it was a dream, like going through that. And of course she had records. That's before my time. I don't have a vinyl or whatever, but it was all kinds of generation. Excuse me, sorry. My bad. Oh my God. Sorry. You know. Oh. You know, excuse me, pardon me. So, you know, it was variety, but I really just loved that experience, like truly. It was like time traveling a bit. Yeah, and my eye be catching spines, and I saw Urugu. I picked up that from her collection. I was like, ooh, come on. Right? And then I also got Africanisms and American culture, Joseph E. Holloway, and some other gems. But it was really like that. So, you know, shout out to getting to know folks through their books. And to the question of how I came to love books, you know, my memory of my childhood is a little bit spotty, but I do recall watching Matilda for the first time. And yes, you know, Matilda, she's, you know, a young white sister, but I did relate to just like being, you know, she's just, you know, maybe people, should I do a temperature check if people know Matilda or? I'm just saying, okay, maybe whatever. But yeah, it's like seeing her just kind of wander and like have her card and like cycle through, and just the magic that those books brought her, like literally, you know. And so that was like something I do remember. And then later on getting to be exposed to books where we're in it. I know depending on where you grow up in the country, you know, you're gonna come across, what's that one, Huckleberry Finn, where they like literally use the N-word and stuff like that. So that's, you know, a first for some of us. But college, that'll do it. Praise the Lord. Yeah, and that really changed things for me. But the women sweeping, we gotta return back to that. I did a little research before coming here because again, I'd had that movie on my radar. And, you know, in addition to who we're centering in the film, it's always a question of who produced it, AKA whose lens. You know, I encourage everyone to kind of look into that. I'll let folks draw their own conclusions, but I do think like, what are you trying to say? It's almost like that sister who was asking like, are they coming here to mock us? I'm almost just like, why is it every clip we got, you know, different angles? I mean, they were really trying to make sure, you know, that we were seeing a woman sweeping. So cleaning, mopping. Yeah, but that's my, thank you.
Oh, I think he had the mic.
I mean, after. No,
I think it's important what you said about that the college never produced. You say Cornel West said, what did you say? Curtis Mayfield, but more importantly, it never produced Dessalines. It never produced Assata Shakur. It never produced Fred Hampton, and so I think that's something to reflect on, right? Another thing, when this about books, I was introduced. My mother went to Federal City College, which is now UDC, so she's from DC. She was an educator. Yeah, she's an educator. She had books around, but I guess my introduction was when I asked her a question, she used to always say, "Look it up," right? And so that was the introduction. Then I guess I fell out of love with books going to DC public schools, right? Seeing that it wasn't, the books didn't reflect our circumstances. And I don't know if I think it was an unconscious rebelliousness against that. That's why, I didn't really, school wasn't a thing for us. But then fell back in love when an elder gave me a book about Marcus Garvey, a thick book, and he challenged me to read it, and so that was powerful. Another thing, just watching this movie really reminded me of Frantz Fanon, Wretch of the Earth, when he talks about the bourgeoisie being the outpost for colonial powers. Just to see, and I feel like that book should be primary reading for all people who are governing in Africa, because it's just, and it also not only Wretch of the Earth, but miseducation of the Negro, right? If you're educated by your oppressor, then I think Malcolm X said you're a damn fool. And so it just, I think it's a real powerful example of what Frantz Fanon wrote in his book, and what is still relevant to this day. So that's pretty much. I just think is to see to see British come, and you have to kind of like be subservient to their to their wishes, or to humbly accept them into your circumstances. But I think with books, my last statement with books, I think is a quote I read that said, "The intrinsic power of knowledge is that you act upon it." And I think that's the most powerful part about having a book, is that not only just reading, knowledge is the intrinsic value of knowledge is action. So I think we have to be clear on what knowledge is for, not just superficial. So thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Solomon. It's a lot of elders in here. So first, I wanted to ask permission from my elders to speak. Okay. So I was thinking. Well, first I would just offer an anecdote of my journey as a student, and sort of, it's not both the love for reading and also the complex relationship with reading that, of course, naturally being in my generation and social milieu produces. So I can't really remember a time when I was not reading. I've been reading since I've been about 2 or 3. And so, vis-a-vis my community, what has made that difficult is sort of when one is reading, and then sort of the folks that are somewhat near you are not sort of engaging in the same dialogue with the text. It's like, you try to go out into your immediate community, and then sort of, at least in my case, what from a young age, sort of speaking to folks had done for me is it sort of made it hard for me to communicate, just in a general sense, because sort of when someone isn't communicating from the same inventory that you are, it might make you retreat deeper into yourself. So for me, it's been a story of sort of this balance between sort of retreat and sort of explanation and translation of what it is that I'm doing. And so, like, and a lot of our communities, our mothers might say, like, oh, like, don't play dumb. That's the, like, sort of an adage that you get for sort of social performance of, the energies that you're imbibing. from where you are. And so that's sort of reading as escape rather than a form of dialogue is something that I carried with me into my interest at Howard. I'm a student who graduated from Howard in 2024. I'm in grad school now at Hopkins. And so what that did for me is sort of what Dr. Carr mentioned at the beginning of his dialogue, or sort of he mentioned the library, and how the undergraduate library doesn't have any books. But what adjoins to the undergraduate library in the Howard context is the fact that there are 8 full stacks and then an Afro-American studies library adjoining directly to that library that has no books in it. And so at least one book from each stack during my matriculation to Howard, it has I'm not exaggerating. If you all have probably all been there by now, but there's a fragment of every area of human knowledge between those 8 stacks adjoining to the undergraduate library. So for me, one of the things that we can do pedagogically, instead of thinking of that as just library, and or library with books in it, library without books in it, what if we translated the entire language object to a pet isu, right? Like, rather than library is just most select of all places, in the sense that what happened? Yeah, yep. Yeah, in the sense that what Africans in the New Kingdom did in Kemet at that complex of temples is that they didn't just worship, right? Worship can be translated to reading, faithful reading over the texts that inhabit the library, but also there were grand celebrations held there. Like, what we have going on in the undergraduate library, even though there's no books there, there's the opportunity for speech. It's a gathering place for speech. And so what would it do to have a syllabus, right, for a course that says, hey, we want you to learn how to use these stacks, right, for their intended purposes, and use it as a devotional practice, in the sense that not everyone has to have the same book that they might read during the semester, but they're required to understand how to go through that book, make a glossary of terms, understand the footnotes and the connected literature, and at the end of the semester have a conversation about each book. And so instead, sort of thinking of the undergraduate library is empty, you could have that in Bongi and directly in the undergraduate library, specifically for the purpose of dissecting the book that a student might select that speaks to their heart and mind the most. And so, it might not be about gaining hegemonic knowledge, but, every single European discipline and our original Black studies discipline is at the top, adjoining to the 8th stack. Part of undisciplining all that, making that knowledge liquid, to talk to each other about it, could be using the undergraduate library as a vehicle to talk about what someone has, devoted themselves to and study what others might call worship all semester. And then, if they properly dissected the book that spoke to their heart the most, then and they take notes properly on the Mbangi discussion, then they have a compendium of books that can last them for the rest of their matriculation at Howard, because they'll be right there in the stacks.
It's an intriguing proposition. I also think that at, what are we now at Howard? $60,000 a year? 50 something, right? I don't want to. I started to say the valorization, but the centering of, like say, ritual practice is important. I might use the Middle Kingdom quicker than the New Kingdom. And the New Kingdom was a little too militaristic for the example. But the Middle Kingdom, particularly that 12th dynasty, and there are people in here who've done a lot more work on this certainly than I have, and Charles Grantham just being one of them. Been Kemetic Institute. By the way, Charles and Carolyn, the Freedom School, the use of Jehudi, the way we used it was absolutely because of the Kemetic Institute. I want y'all to know that for the record. You know what I'm saying? That's Jake Carruthers. That's all of y'all. I want y'all to know that. But the centering, well, let's use the film, for example. And by the way, just as a footnote, when I was looking at those women sweeping, you know, what the thought that occurred to me was the beauty of a well-swept floor. I'm just saying, because my daddy swept floors. One of my earliest memories of him cleaning up in the medical art building at Vanderbilt, sweeping floors. But I think they may have used it, and I'm glad you researched that, and I encourage people as well to look at those co-directors. I didn't realize till talking to Louisa what some of their background was. But I think the idea of labor was that trope, the labor of Black women, because it was the two women who built the library. And so I think probably maybe one of the things the directors were doing was trying to anchor this whole thing in the question of labor, the labor of Black women, whether it's about the dignity of labor or not. But you got these two women leading this spearhead to construct this library. And throughout, there's this trope of women sweeping, like clearing the way, clearing that fountain. May or not be the case. Anyway, back to the point. I think it's an intriguing idea, the idea of an Mbongi, a house without rooms, using those spaces as a place to kind of connect the oral to the written in that sense. But I think, though, that the challenge becomes, again, the elitist practice. In the film, remember when the librarian trying to protect his turf, and there was some gendered renderings in there that I thought were maybe uninspired, kind of flat. But I mean, you know, the dude is the villain. He's the professional librarian. Although he did have some women, but they weren't talking because he the one telling them y'all shouldn't be with those people. I mean, but remember the pushback between the Dewey Decimal and the sister is like, this is a colonial system. Founders. When Dorothy Porter Wesley, who was not a librarian in the sense that was familiar at Howard, but was a master librarian in many ways, like Hallie Quinn Brown and so many others, these Black women around, Jean Blackwell Hudson at the Schomburg, Jessie Carney Smith at Fisk. Her categorization that Negroes think they've discovered in the last 4 or 5 years, write all these articles about, oh, Dorothy Porter Wesley revolutionized. Okay, go sit down. She was primarily a book collector. See, there's a difference between a book collector and a librarian. Charles Bloxham was a book collector. Arthur Schomburg was a book collector, which is why when Gene Houston rearranged all his books, Schomburg, as Dr. Clark used to say, in the Negro division, he came to work the next day and everything was organized by Dewey Decimal. He promptly said, "You are fired because I can't find anything. I bought these books and I arranged them by color and size, and you done come in here with these little dots." Anyway, Dorothy Porter always had attention at Howard, because you had trained librarians who were trained differently, who felt as if she was somehow maybe not a cut below, but they couldn't get around it because she had been the one who acquired the books. When Dorothy Porter Wesley retired, they changed the locks at Moreland Spingarn. Maybe some of these Negroes will be courageous enough to tell y'all about that. Because she kept coming to work. That's how you dishonor an elder. But there are many dishonored elders at Howard: Sterling Allen Brown, Ernest Everett Just. So the whole idea of who gets to be a guardian of knowledge, I think that what you rendered is something that does and has happened over the years. Ta-Nehisi talks about that, you know, going to the browsing room. And I'm not passing this class, but I'm gonna sit in here and read these books all day. His friend Ben Talton, who's now the director of Moreland Spingarn, just told that story last week at the 14th Amendment Symposium over at the law school, just reading books. So I do think that occurs. There's somebody on the faculty now in the history department, Natalie Pierre. Natalie was a history major, and they asked me, we want to study Du Bois. So in that same undergraduate library where Moreland Spingarn is down there in the sub-basement, I used to meet them once a week, and we would read Du Bois. That's why she got CBS on the side of her her graduation ring. What do they call those rings? Those rings with the rubies and all that kind of thing. Class ring, yeah, okay, class ring. I never aspired to one. I ain't had no money. But on the side, she has CBS on there because Du Bois called himself in one of the renderings a cold-blooded scholar. So anyway, but I'm saying all that to say this. So I think those kind of things happen. To elevate that, I think as a practice might be the type of insurgency that would be worthwhile undertaking. At 61, I want to spend the rest of the breaths I have over here and not over there. So if you want to do that, I support you 150%, brother.
No, I just want to. I wanted to make two comments, and we're coming to a close. I don't know if you guys realize this.
Some of these Negroes got on plane in the West Coast. Yeah, man. They ain't been sleeping 24 hours.
We're on a different time zone over here. I wanted to say one thing in relation to this question of reading and also practice. Right, I am the chair of political education for the Southern Workers Assembly. That is started specifically in North Carolina, organizing workers. So we're intending to, develop in that particular process in political education. This question of readability comes up in every particular conversation. And I'm on this committee with somebody that you all probably know as Brother Abdullah Kalimat. And one of the things he always kind of impresses, you have to make it plain. This notion, of course, he picks up from Malcolm. So these questions that we're dealing with here are questions of struggle, but they're questions of collective struggle that we have to be in conversation with in the context of our practices in the spaces that we are in. And so as someone who's in the classroom, outside of the classroom, trying to find that rhythm is like John Coltrane, trying to find that note that is going to resonate. It's something that we're just going to have to continually do. I also want us to make sure that we pay attention to reading the world precedes reading the word on the page, meaning that we are all readers in the context that we're constantly navigating spaces that, and quite frankly, are trying to kill us. So in that particular instance, one of the things that I do try to do in the context of like reading is, even if my students, they know this, I will literally stop in the middle. You know how we go. We have a plan. We go in. We want to get some content. We look at their faces. They looking at you, looking at me. I'm like, you know what? Let's stop. What's on your mind right now? And so a lot of what's on their mind, and I always take it, as we know, Master T, we wrap it back into the material in some way. I usually try to do it before they're walking out the door, just to say, but the point is that the conversations become rich, and the students tend to, these students, the younger they are, they're beginning, because they're a little bit more conscious of what's happening than a lot of the generation. Because we're that COVID generation is kind of phasing out. The students who have, you know what I'm saying? So that level, now you're getting a different type of student. And we have to be cognizant of that. So I just wanted to say that we are dealing with these particular questions. And what is interesting is a lot of the workers that we're dealing with throughout the South, they want to read some of the most hardest stuff that our students run away from. So that's important as well. So again, they're reading the world because they're in the workplace, right? They're dealing with the realities, and they're trying to make sure of what they're experiencing is something that's real. So that theory practice concept. I just wanted to make those two notes that whatever we're doing, we have to be in communication. We have to be in spaces. Greg creates a space. Africa Will Now Project creates these spaces, and we have to be intentional in being in each other's space and sharing, practices, lessons, and those type of things. So with that being said, I don't want to be the last word. I want to give, Greg the last word as we kind of come to a particular close, because like I said, it's about 11:30 right now. I'm about 10:30. I'm just joking. But yeah, I know we'll be in here because the conversation is very rich. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of close out, or leave some thoughts for us. Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you, James. We don't get a chance to do this as much. I listen, of course, and this has been a drumbeat. If you're not aware of the Africa Now Collective, It's a regular, and of course, everything's archived now, so we can go back and some very, as you just said, use the word rich conversations and layered conversations. It would be very interesting because there's some people in this room who remember Abdullah Kalamat from the Black Nationalists versus the Black Marxists in the 70s. And people in this room could tell you some stories about too. What did Russell Adams used to say? He even looks like Lenin, but at any rate, but that ain't even an inside joke. He would laugh at that. Yeah, and when he comes to DC, sometimes you find Abdul Kalamat over here at Sankofa or something. It's all you get at you. But I'll say this very quickly. Just like what we just saw, these two sisters took an institution and are trying to convert it for the people. Sankofa is doing that now, as I mentioned, expanding, needing every penny to do it, needing cooperation from the government, because it hasn't been quite a decade since we all got together and people testified at City Hall because they were trying to get a tax abatement because, you know, the colonizers are coming up Georgia Avenue and they will not have this space, not as long as we are here. So, you know, always being mindful. So we're trying to do that. There are institution builders in this space. A lot of people here from ASCAC, you know, whether it be Crest in the West or how y'all pronounce it in South Carolina, the Temple. Christ in the East. These are African-centered institutions that control space, that are building space. ASCAC is looking for a building. We were talking about today, de-accession libraries and public spaces. There are a lot of buildings in this country, in some little small towns and some not so small towns. Carnegie libraries or old school buildings that can be converted. It's a conversation, and I'm just mentioning this now as we close for the record, because one thing about this crack staff here at Sankofa, they capture all the conversations. And so without anything else having been said, I think we've said enough tonight for now. Our conference starts tomorrow at Roosevelt High School. I think we start at 9 o'clock. Is it? I said Roosevelt. Didn't I say Roosevelt? Yeah, Theodore Roosevelt. I want to make sure. Not the one. Yeah, I guess name for the guy who was shooting elephants in Kenya. But the reality is, we start tomorrow at 9. So everybody is invited. Y'all can come down. There's also a streaming option. So if y'all watching, you can register. Go to ascac.org. I think that's is that right? ASCAC found ASCAC.org. Yeah, all right. ASCAC. And Muiza, man, you pulled this off, brother. Look, this is a soft-spoken African. He don't say a whole lot, but he be moving mountains, brother. We love you. Thank you. Thank you, Sankofa. Thank you, Africa World now. And then Muiza, we should give him Muiza last word because he the one that got us here. So, brother, we appreciate you. And thank you, James. Thank everybody for coming.
No, I don't think there's much more to be said. I think everything has been said. And make sure you do sign up on the newsletter for Sankofa. If you're not on that newsletter, please do sign up for that. There are many programs.
No, don't let him go. You can tell me, look, Haile Garima will get to say that last. Yeah, look at it. Come up here. I knew he was going.
I'll let Haile say the last word.
I'm going to give that. Don't give him that. Let me take this one. Go get on that corner and preach. No, don't. You can't beat me on front of everybody. Look at him trying to go away. No, come on. Look, get him. Hey, that was beautiful.
First time I've seen Haile speechless.
Seriously. That's a good way to stop, ain't it?
Yeah, I think that's a wrap. Thank you very much. Great discussion, man. It didn't sound like it. Was he tired? Did he sound tired?
Sorry?
Did he sound tired?
No, he was